Federal judge in Philadelphia is dismantling Donald Trump's Ministry of Truth, his Orwellian attempt to rewrite history, to erase slavery and the stain of slavery from our public consciousness, to literally rip down with bare hands plaques on the president's house in Independence Hall Memorial in Philadelphia, commemorating the 9 slaves owned by George Washington, because Donald Trump finds it distasteful. And Judge Rufe is showing what federal judges in year 2 of this administration, now robust, now with courage, now willing to take on the Trump administration in a way they weren't to a year ago, what they're doing about it. They're quoting George Orwell. They're telling the world that Donald Trump is not able to erase facts and history that are meaningful to the American people or otherwise, as Donald Trump is busy trying to put back up Confederate generals as statues and put their names back on military bases. The fact that I'm going to show the clip in a minute, the fact that he sent a couple of National Park Service lackeys to go with their bare hands and rip down these plaques from the president's house, which commemorates the location where President Adams and President Washington resided, in the cradle of our democracy, Philadelphia, where I've been since I was a child, which I frequent, and I've been to Independence Hall, the reproduction of where the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were signed, to the Liberty Bell exhibit, which is next to this president's house, to the Betsy Ross Memorial about the person who allegedly, mythically created the flag. Donald Trump has no respect for anything that has to do with our history. He allowed the Capitol, another cradle of our democracy, to be attacked and burned for the first time since the War of 1812. And Judge Rufe, senior status judge, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and people like Governor Josh Shapiro are putting a stop to it. I'm Michael Popok. You're on MeidasTouch and Legal AF. I'm fired up. I'm glad we have judges like Judge Rufe, and I'm glad the senior status judges are leading the way once again, citing too frequently George Orwell. Now, this all comes down to a plaque, a set of plaques. I'm going to show you a video of it being torn down in a new memorial called President's House, which Philadelphia and Pennsylvania found through historical research, which is the place where Adams and Washington lived. And this was a memorial to the 9, I'm going to read their names in a minute, the 9 enslaved people who were enslaved to do jobs for George Washington. That's the right way to put it. And Donald Trump wants to change that. So 3 weeks ago, he sent a couple of guys in to rip the signs down. Now, this is a joint collaboration of the federal government, the Interior Department, the Park Service, and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania to operate this site. But they can't deface it. They can't rewrite it. They can't put their Trumpian graffiti on it. Here's a clip of these guys ripping down the signs.
Developing right here and right now tonight on Independence Mall, a piece of Philadelphia history was removed this afternoon by the federal government. Crews dismantled plaques telling the stories of the 9 enslaved people who lived in the president's house and were owned by President George Washington. Last year, President Trump ordered National Park staff to flag any displays that might be seen as disparaging to America's past. Philadelphia Mayor Sherelle Parker says the city is conducting a legal review of this tonight. An attorney who advocated for those plaques in 2010 called the removal, quote, outrageous and blatantly racist.
Here's how the Judge Rufe, in granting a preliminary injunction against the Interior Department, forcing them to restore the site the way it was. Here's what she says to lead off on page 1, her order today. All history was a palimpsest, scraped clean and reinscribed exactly as often as was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification had taken place. George Orwell, 1984. The judge kicks off her order this way. As if the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984 now existed, with its motto, ignorance is strength, this court is now asked to determine whether the federal government has the power it claims to dissemble and disassemble historical truths when it has some domain over historical facts. It does not. The president's house is a component of the Independence Historical Park that commemorates the site of the first official presidential residence and the people who lived there. These are the first presidents, including people enslaved by President George Washington. On January 22nd of 2026, the National Park Service removed those panels, as you saw, and displays and video exhibits referencing slavery. The judge goes on page 31 of her order to talk about these enslaved people and how Donald Trump can't whitewash history away, not on her watch. She says on page 31, quoting from a research book and an amicus brief, the people who President Washington held in slavery, which the commemoration of him on those panels include Oni Judge, who was held in slavery as a maid, Austin, Oni's brother, Christopher Shields, held in slavery as Washington's butler, body servant, Giles as a carriage driver, Hercules Posey held in slavery as a chef, Joe Richardson held in slavery as a coachman, Moll as a nanny, Paris as a stable worker, Richmond, the son of Hercules, held in slavery as a chimney sweep. She then quotes George Orwell again about the attempted rewrite. And listen to what she calls Donald Trump in this section. She says the largest section, quoting Big Brother's domain in 1984, the largest section of the government's records department consists simply of persons whose duty it was to track down and collect all copies of books, newspapers, and other documents which had been superseded and were due for destruction. In other words, recalling and rewriting again and again without admitting any alteration or admitting any forgery about what had just been rewritten. The government here, the judge says, asserts truth is no longer self-evident, but rather the property of the elected chief magistrate and the appointees and delegates, that's you, Trump, as to his whim to have it scraped clean, hidden, or overwritten. And why? Solely because he has the power. Listen to this quote she takes from Oral Argument. This is what the Department of Justice lawyer under Donald Trump, an officer of the court sworn to uphold the Constitution, who went to a law school program like mine. This is what this person had the temerity to say out loud in court. At least he admitted it, or she admitted it. Although many people feel strongly about this one way, other people may disagree or feel strongly another way. We're both siding slavery? What's next? We're both siding the Holocaust? There were good people on both sides, the Nazis and the Jews and the Gypsies and the Russians. Ultimately, it is in this context that the government gets to choose the message it wants to convey. Yeah, only in George Orwell's 1984. The message that the government chooses to convey is for the government to choose. I don't get to choose, the lawyer says, what the message is, and it's our position that the city, or by implication, the judge, doesn't either. An agency, the judge continues, or any agency, cannot arbitrarily decide what is true based on its own whims and the whims of new leadership, regardless of the evidence before it. Preliminary injunction granted. Arbitrary and capricious action. You cannot rewrite history. Conclusion, page 40. The defendant shall reinstall all panels, displays, and video exhibits that were in place. They shall prevent any additions, removals, or destruction, or further changes to the president's house, except in a mutual written agreement between the defendants and the city of Philadelphia. An order will be entered. I had Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, join me for an interview about how to oppose a lawless president doing lawless and rogue things. And he had this to say to me in the interview. Play the clip.
Where you are eviscerating the trust between law enforcement and the community, as we're seeing in Minneapolis, where you're leaving families to be hungry, as you see, because of the way in which he ripped SNAP away. And I think what we have to do is, yes, we got to win in the midterms, but before that, we need people standing up every single day, not being afraid to speak up, standing up and fighting for what's right. Sometimes it's in a court of law, as I do, and sometimes it needs to be people who are peacefully protesting and standing up to this administration. I think it is all critically important, and I just want to celebrate the people who do stand up for the rule of law every day and do stand up for what's right.
Scaling a business doesn't mean doing everything yourself. The smartest teams, they delegate faster with the right freelance talent. And that's where Upwork comes in. Upwork is a one-stop platform to find, hire, and pay expert freelancers across web and software development, data and analytics marketing, business operations, and more. Upwork helps grow your business by giving you fast access to specialized talent across more than 125 categories, so you can fill skill gaps, launch projects faster, and scale support up or down without committing to full-time headcount. You can browse profiles, review past work, and get help scoping the role so you can hire with confidence and get started quickly. With Business Plus, you can access the top 1% of talent on Upwork, and with AI-powered shortlisting, you'll get matched to the right freelancer in under 6 hours. No endless searching required. Upwork also cuts down operational hassle by handling things like contracts and payments in one place, so you can spend more time running the business. Thousands of growing businesses already trust Upwork to hire flexible, high-quality freelance talent for everything from one-off projects to ongoing support. It's free to sign up, and posting a job is easy. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com. What I'm watching and what I'm observing is that federal judges in the year 2 of this administration are getting their groove back. They are understanding what their inherent authority stretched to its outer boundaries is. They're understanding what contempt proceedings are about. And I predict, and I think I'm going to be right about this, or I wouldn't make the prediction, that more and more federal judges are going to be holding the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, Interior, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and anybody else in contempt. Somebody, many people are at risk to going to jail in the Trump administration, not waiting around for the new Department of Justice in 2028 or 2029, but now, on the receiving end of a contempt order by a federal judge. That ceiling was broken by Judge Boasberg last year in D.C. in a case involving 137 men made to disappear in El Salvador, and him starting criminal contempt proceedings against Kristi Noem. But other judges are going to pick up the mantle. They have the courage. In fact, I asked Judge Ludig, former Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, who should be our Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, about what's the big change with federal judges. He talks to them regularly. This is what he had to say to me.
Frankly, every American is against Donald Trump today, except his dyed-in-the-wool MAGA, I believe, and of course, the Congress of the United States, right? So, but that, tsunami that didn't begin until a month ago was the saving grace for the lower federal courts. Whatever cliche you want to stiffen their spines, but actually, no, more appropriately, it gave them the courage, the needed courage from above them or outside them to do what they knew they had to do and wanted to do all along. And that's why you've seen floodgates, every single thing leading up to most recently. And this had begun 4 months in the last 4 months of last year, 6 months of last year, actually, where it began. The Department of Justice and every other government official that appeared before the courts, including the Solicitor General of the United States, another law clerk of mine.
I was just going to say, don't leave out John Sauer or your other clerk.
Don't you worry. And all of those officials began addressing the federal courts of the United States in court with open contempt.
Yeah.
And actually lying to the federal judges to their faces. And that, the federal judges began to push back on that the last 6 months of last year. Now, when it's clear that they're going to do this for the next 3 years, those same federal judges, meaning all of the lower court federal judges, they're not going to have it.
So we will continue to follow what happens next as Donald Trump tries to rewrite history and write out and whitewash slavery here on MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button here. Come over to Legal AF YouTube, do the exact same thing. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.